It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. I'm glad y'all here. Well, you know, where do I start this week? I have been in conversations with people who have pushed me to whop people over the head with racial equity content who clearly have zero understanding of just basics around difference. I have been in conversation with someone who wanted to verify that I wasn't going to be threatening when I came to engage their executive leadership team. I have been on a call when someone who was born in a rural environment, well-meaning, has said to me, the couple colored people that I lived with, I didn't see them any differently. I mean, I noticed that they were colored, but I didn't treat them any differently. And when I think about this spectrum of like where people are in terms of their level of understanding about race in America, it is always astonishing to me when folks want to go all the way out to these really progressive ideas about race and being shocked that other people are not where they are. There's some things that don't shock me. Like I was disappointed, but I don't know that I was shocked when white people started to say, well, is she really black? You see, when I went to North Carolina A&T back in 1994, one of the things that was astonishing to me was that black people were not a monolith. And stick with me for a moment. You see, I'd grown up in the heart of Kansas City during the height of the crack cocaine epidemic, and the black people I knew were largely lower class from a financial standpoint. Those were the people I knew. The people who had made their way out and who were successful were either entrepreneurs, and they were likely hairdressers or barbers, or they worked in, I did know a doctor, I didn't know a lawyer, I didn't know any judges, and I knew preachers, but by and large, the black people I knew were black people who were poor. And so I had a very limited view of what blackness meant. And then I went to North Carolina A&T, and it was there that I met black people from the Caribbean. It was there that I met black people whose families had owned hundreds of acres of farmland and tobacco farms in Carolina and who were incredibly wealthy. It was there where I met black Catholics in droves. It was there when I met people whose parents were not only crazy rich, like insanely rich, and they weren't drug dealers, and they weren't athletes, and they weren't movie stars or singers. They were rich doing some kind of job, and were employing other people. I met people there whose families had been generations after generations of college graduates, people who were third and fourth generation students there at A&T. And so even my eyes were opened up. And I'm telling you this story for a reason. Just stick with me. To meet black Hebrews, to meet black people who were atheists, to meet black people who went over to the Daddy Grace Church, black people who were Scientologists. It blew my mind. All the black people I knew had been Christian, and many of them in the same denominations. Even I, in 1994, had my eyes opened up to what it means to be black. But one thing is for sure, Even today, when I step on the campus of North Carolina A&T State University, none of us are questioning anyone's blackness because they're there. Because that's not what educated black people do consistently. Okay? That's not what educated black people do. Because educated black people understand that the transatlantic slave trade was a global travesty that basically mined the human resources of several countries on the west coast of the continent of Africa. Speaking of 1994, there's all this talk about the crime bill and prosecutors being tough on crime. I want to go back to what it was like in my neighborhood in the 90s. And I want to give you some insight into how destructively blind my own beliefs were. You see, regardless of how the crack got into our communities, it was there. And because crack was in our communities, there were some people who tried crack cocaine. Some of you were probably following me, and you did not get addicted. But other people, one hit of crack cocaine and they were addicted. I saw beautiful, handsome men with amazing singing talents strung out on crack cocaine. I saw my friend's mother selling her body for crack cocaine. My best friend of all time, who is no longer here with me today, her beautiful, smart, intelligent, talented mother became addicted to crack cocaine. And on my street, there was a drug house across the street. There was one next door to that. There was one next door to me on this side. And if you went up the street there was a small apartment complex where there were people selling drugs. From my ability to walk from my house to my bus stop, that was just literally up the street and around the corner 2 blocks, was a landmine of all kinds of things that could go wrong. Now, what I did have working in my favor is that I have 6 siblings. And so for the most part, people were not harassing or bothering me. And when they did, there were some huge consequences for that, because my family, while they might pick on me, you can't. And I think that's consistent for many people. But why do I tell that story? There were young men who had never had any money ever before, who were out on the street all day, 24 hours a day, selling and slinging crack cocaine. What did that come with it? That came with people fighting. That came with people paying women to do some of the most just unconscionable things because their minds had failed them because of crack cocaine. There were times when I slept on my floor in my bedroom because it was not safe to sleep in the bed. Until about 4 years ago, there were still bullet holes in the outside of my childhood home from drive-by shootings. Okay? Police came through the block all day, every day. And it was interesting. They happened to always be there when there was money traveling through the neighborhood that they needed to acquire, to confiscate. But they were never there when somebody had left her daughter or her child in order to get crack. They were never there when Brad was across the street beating the crap out of his mother. They were never there when people were leaving trash everywhere and walking around with guns. And this spirit of crack cocaine created something that even I called super predators. I'm not proud of it. It was the wrong word to use. And if you are judging it, it's likely you didn't live in it. And we can, in hindsight, go back to that time and go, I can't believe. But in churches and in community groups and in schools all over my community, we were begging for someone to do something. And why did we want them to do something? Because we were prisoners in our own homes. And so when you come 20 years, 25 years forward, and you look back at that time and you go, well, I can't believe that we were engaging in mass incarceration, or I can't believe that you would call someone a predator, or I can't believe that you are looking at Black people singularly, or that you were focusing on police brutality instead of Black on Black crime. One of the things that I would implore all of us to do is to really sit in all of the stuff that you have done and open your heart to be just a little more empathetic and compassionate to others. What is happening to Kamala Harris right now, I'm sorry, it's unfair. And I'm going to say that it is unfair because half of the people I know were also on the super predator side. Now, what we should have known, what we should have been able to strategize for was that Black skin does not matter in this country, and if ever we give someone a license to lock us up, that they will, and what that impact will be on families. That's what we should have known, but we did not know that then, the vast majority of us. And what did we want? We just wanted our communities to be safer, and we felt that the police would help us. We felt that prosecutors would help us not be prisoners on our own streets. And it's a kind of revisionist history to go back in that time and judge it from the current view of today. And if people change and you still hold them to account for what they did, you tell me, what is the purpose of having changed? What is the purpose of having changed? It is an absolute lie if I get on here and I tell you that I have always been an advocate for the LGBT community. I have not. And if by chance you could pull up records of my little Bible thumping self and when I was 15 years old, you could probably find something that's disparaging. But today, not only am I an ally, I'm an advocate. And if people in that community are going to hold me to task for what I did in 1985, tell me, what is the use of me changing it for today? You tell me. If I cannot have patience with the person who is saying, I want to do better, but then who is referring to Black people as colored, who am I? At what point did I not understand poor language and somebody had to correct me? And I think sometimes, I think about even the topic of abortion. People get married and they fall in love and they get money. And then they're like, oh my God, abortion is terrible. You had so many abortions when you were a teenager. You're a damn serial killer. Okay. And so don't change your position when it suits your narrative. Don't do that. It is not helpful to us. And so here I am raising my hand to say, I have been on the culturally destructive end of the continuum many times as it relates to crime, as it relates to policing, as it relates to sexual orientation, as it relates to gender identity, as it relates to religion, as it relates to wealth, as it relates to a lot of things. And all I'm saying is, as you know better, do better. When you learn, do better. And as you learn and do better, you are not helping by looking back at everybody else and going, ugh, you disgust me because you are not where I am. You can do nothing or you can do something, but only one of these things has any chance of helping things to be better, and that's doing something. And what are you doing to bring people along to help them get to cultural proficiency besides judging? And if you're going to judge folk, go back and judge your life with the same rigor. With the same rigor. It's Filter Free Friday, y'all. We got work to do.